Hello, on this show we discuss how to make your foundation, your skeletal system, your bones very strong and even reverse some of the bone loss that you may have had using a new technology. So stay tuned for a very exciting episode. My guest today, Sarah Glicken, is the co-founder, owner of OsteoStrong LA, a biohacking wellness center focusing on strengthening the foundation of our body, the skeletal system. After a successful career as a marketing professional with over 20 years experience in music, design, and hospitality, Sarah left to pursue her dream of supporting people towards achieving optimal health. She has a master's in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica and is a certified holistic health coach from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. Sarah has a strong belief that everybody deserves to live in a healthy body. Okay, Sarah, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you're an expert in health and wellness, and you're also a biohacker, but you're now in the business of health and wellness. So tell the listeners your story and how you got to where you are.
Absolutely. So I've always been really passionate about health and wellness from a personal perspective. I grew up in a hippie family where we were eating organic before organic was a buzzword, and learned from a really young age how important it was to take care of myself and this body that I was given, and starting from a young age in longevity and prevention. And so that's always been a passion of mine. Unfortunately, I walked both my parents through cancer journeys, and they both died within the past 10 years. And after that experience, I really wanted to dedicate myself to supporting people in health journeys. And I wasn't sure what that meant, but I knew that everybody deserves to live in a healthy body and that people just need the support sometimes to be able to do it. And when I found OsteoStrong, it felt like it was the perfect way for me to give back and be of service.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about OsteoStrong, which is a really cool technology that helps people create stronger bones. But first, let's define the problem, Sarah. What's actually going on and what's happening to our bones as we get older, and why do we start losing some of our bone structure?
Sure. So it's a pretty interesting, and most people don't even know about this, but we reach peak bone mass around age 30. Okay. And then everyone, men, women, doesn't matter who we are, we start to lose our bone mass at that point. So after age 30, we're typically losing 1% to 2% bone density every year after that. And then if you have hereditary propensity for osteoporosis or bone loss, you might be losing more. And then specifically women and men, as we age, we start to lose more. In fact, women after menopause can lose as much as 20% of their bone density in that 5 to 7 years after menopause. So it's a pretty staggering number.
Yeah, the 20%, I can't even imagine losing 20% of your bone mass in just 5 to 7 years. That would shrink you as a person. You said that men, women, everybody, it starts at age 30 and gets worse, at least for women around menopause, but it's a gradual decline from then on. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly. And basically, bone is a living tissue, okay? So it's constantly being broken down and replaced from when we're born through our entire lives. And what happens with osteoporosis and when people have bone density issues is that the creation of new bone is it's not keeping up with the bone loss. So generally, what happens with healthy bone tissue is even as we're losing bone, we're gaining new bone. So it's sort of evens out along the way, but that stops happening when people start losing more than they're gaining. So Prevention is really the key.
Awesome. So what about nutrition or exercise or movement, or do those play a part, and do they stave off some of the bone loss or slow it down?
So 100%. All of those things are going to support you. I mean, really, what we eat, how we move, how much we exercise. Also things like cancer, or if anyone's had an eating disorder, thyroid issues. There are so many things that can affect bone loss in our lives as we're aging. And there are many things that can help us to keep it strong. But that said, unfortunately, even those of us who are doing everything possible and eating all of the right things and making sure that we're getting enough sun and taking our D3 and making sure that our D and K levels are good and that we have adequate calcium and we really can absorb nutrients in our bodies, there are still some people that it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. So as we get osteoporosis, or we're at increased risk of osteoporosis, as you said, after the age of 30, what happens as a result of of us losing our bone or the bones weakening? Do we break them easier, or what's the end result that most people kind of start to experience?
Absolutely, actually. And according to the National Osteoporosis Foundation, 50% of women and about a third of all men over 50 will experience a fracture due to osteoporosis. So a pretty huge amount of people are affected by this. But it's not just fractures that we're worried about. It's pain in the body, it's falls. And we know that when someone falls, they are much more likely to have other problems because of it as well. So it has a lot of effects, even when we're talking about things as basic as picking up a grandchild or going on a walk with our dog. And we tend to be more cautious and afraid if we're at an increased risk for fracture. But and this is another really interesting statistic. So a woman's risk of breaking her hip is equal to the combined risk of breast, uterine, and ovarian cancer after age 50. And men over 50 are more likely to break a bone due to an osteoporotic fracture than they are to get prostate cancer. Wow. So it's pretty amazing that the numbers that we're looking at. I mean, it's estimated that 54 million people in the US alone have bone density issues. So 10 million Americans have the diagnosis of osteoporosis, and another 44 million have low bone density. And most of them don't even know it until something happens to them.
Yeah, that's a shocking statistic. I've heard so much more about breast cancer, but for you to put that in perspective, it's really shocking. And I know from a longevity perspective, getting a fracture after a certain age can be really devastating, because I think the numbers right now are up to 60% of people that get a fracture or that break a hip, I should say, die within a year, which is crazy, right?
Right. And so, that's usually from a secondary illness like pneumonia or something else from it, but right. It starts down that path. Absolutely. I mean, if we think about it, our skeletal system it's the structural frame of our entire body. So if we're not keeping that healthy, then how can the rest of us stay healthy, right? It's what holds our entire meat suit, so to speak, in place is our skeletal system. So it's really important that we're keeping our muscles and our bones and our ligaments and our tendons really strong, even as we age.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's a shame, as you mentioned, Sarah, that we don't actually know when it's creeping up on us because it's inside our bodies. And the only way that I know to test this is a DEXA scan. Is that correct?
That is the most prominent way of testing it. There are some new things coming out, like bone marker tests in blood. So we can test that. Actually, at UCLA, they're doing some studies on it, and as well as other teaching hospitals around the country about other ways to track. Because unfortunately, a DEXA scan, not only do you get a very small amount of radiation, but some radiation from it, but also it's just not that accurate, because if you're not using the exact same piece of equipment with the exact same technician, your results can vary as over 5%. And that can be the difference of how much bone you're gaining or losing in a period of time. So there are definitely there's a lot of research out there. There are some new ultrasound technology that was developed in Italy that is now FDA approved that we're actually looking into as another potential instead of DEXA scans. But currently DEXA scan is what is considered the norm.
Okay, so let's dive into OsteoStrong, the technology that Dr. John Jaquish invented, who, by the way, listeners of this podcast would know that he was on the show a few episodes ago, I think last month. Dynamic guy, loved having him on. So Sarah, you're working with him, you guys are partners in a way. So tell the listeners what OsteoStrong is and why should people care?
Absolutely. So OsteoStrong is a patented technology that strengthens bones, joints, and muscles. And the way that we do that is through end-to-end compression on the bones that triggers what's called osteogenesis. And the way that this all came about was John Jaquish was actually getting his PhD and his mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. So he started studying bone. And as he looked at it, he said, osteoporosis is a deconditioning of the bone. And if it's deconditioned, we should be able to recondition it. And from there, he started researching. And there's a very prominent law in medicine called Wolff's Law, which essentially says that bone is living tissue and can be remodeled under high impact force. And so he took that information and thought, well, if that's the case, how can we safely load force onto the body without risking injury in a way that can trigger the body's own adaptive response to grow bone muscle and ligaments and tendon tissue? So that is what he did. P.S. His mother is 82 and she now has the bone density of a healthy 30-year-old. So she was able to completely reverse her own osteoporosis. I should say that, we don't treat, diagnose, or cure anything.
Right.
But what we do is support your own body in making changes, and in a way that is a way to safely load against our bones. Because if you think about bones as they're living tissue and they bend and move. So think of it, I like to think of it like a very tall building, right? So very tall buildings are made so that they can sway slightly, right? And that's what keeps them from cracking in half. And that's sort of the way that our bones are as well. So if we're able to safely load, we're not putting pressure this way, we're loading end to end. And that force is what creates what's called osteogenesis, which triggers the body to grow new tissue.
Got it. And so I've been to your facility in particular, and I've also seen OsteoStrong at a Tony Robbins conference, which I believe Tony Robbins is a partner with Dr. Jaquish on this technology, which is super cool, great validation. But I've been to your facility, and there's a lot of cool devices. And of course, there's different devices for loading different bones because there's upper body, there's lower body, there's leg push and arm pull and whatnot. So tell the listeners how these different devices load the bone up and make it stronger.
Yep. So I'll just take the upper. So we have 4 different devices, and every time you come in, you actually use all 4 of the devices. So regardless if you have low bone density in your hip, you're still going to be doing the upper body as well. But what we're doing, if we're thinking about the upper body as an example, we put you in a position where you're actually at your absolute strongest position. So we eliminate your weak range of motion completely. And for the upper body, in that case, we're working on from our elbow to our wrist and from our shoulder to our elbow. So that are the two areas that we're loading. But the interesting thing is, because it's all executed under your own force, anyone is able to do it. So our youngest member is a 15-year-old who's a baseball player and actually hoping to make the majors. And our oldest member is in her 90s. We have professional athletes. We've had some of the American Ninja Warriors doing it. And it really works for all levels because it's all based on your own body. And it's, since we're not loading anything on top of it. So that's the one for the upper body. Then we have one that works from your hips down to your knees and your knees down to your ankles. And then the next device is for your core. So that's loading from your rib cage down to your pelvis. The rib cage is a very frequently fractured part of the body. So Dr. Jaquish wanted to be sure to affect that part as well. And then the final one is called the postural growth trigger, and that is actually for our spine. So that works both in supporting us in proper posture, but it also gives us a momentary compression on our spine, which supports us in increasing bone density in those areas. And the interesting thing is that since it also supports our joints and our muscles and ligaments, what we frequently see is people who've had injuries or have had pain in parts of their bodies able to really significantly change that. We have a young guy he's about 40, and he was a competitive soccer player in Argentina. He's had 4 ACL surgeries, and when he came to us, he was not able to run at all. And after about 5 months of coming to OsteoStrong, he was able to run down the beach with his kids with no pain. And now he's actually back on the soccer field. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's really cool. I bet you have a lot of these stories where people are turning around and starting to live better lives because they can improve their bone density and bone strength and reverse some of the loss. I don't know if I'm able to make that claim, but get their bone health back, right?
Yeah.
What can you tell us more? Like, have there been any scientific studies done on OsteoStrong by itself as a device?
Yes. So there are some studies about it. And then there's also a lot of really exciting anecdotal information about our specific location that I can share as well. So there have been 2 studies done on osteogenic loading on the body. And the most recent one showed about a 14% increase in bone density in postmenopausal women. So that's quite a significant increase in a short period of time. We also did research on users at OsteoStrong, and that showed almost a 300% increase in strength over a 4-year period of time. Are
we talking bone strength as measured on the device or muscle strength?
So it's a combination of bone and muscle strength. So it's actually, that's measured by how much force output we're able to have on each of the devices. But the way that equates in real life is that we see people who are able to lift things more easily. I remember myself personally, I don't have any bone density issues, and I've always been quite strong. But after a few months of doing OsteoStrong, I got onto a plane, and I remember picking up my carry-on to put into the overhead compartment, and I was like, boop, and it was like, wow, it was like so much easier, and nothing else had changed other than doing OsteoStrong. So frequently people start to notice. We had a member who came in, and she went to Bhutan with her daughter, and she was just amazed at how easy the hiking was for her. And she's in her 70s, and she felt confident, and she had proper balance, and she was sure-footed and felt strong. So some really powerful examples of that. And probably a lesser known one, but that's also very interesting, is how it can affect type 2 diabetics. So what we see is that it can significantly lower A1C levels in type 2 diabetes. So that's a really exciting and interesting and different. So basically, our body is able to metabolize glucose more efficiently once we have increased our muscle and bone density. So it's essentially like our bodies can sort of rev up and to metabolize the glucose more efficiently.
Yeah, it's super cool side effect. And for folks that don't know, HbA1c is the average of your body's glucose over the last about 3 to 4 months. I believe it's 3 months. And so it gives you a pretty good indication of where you're trending and how high or how low it is. So for any technology to reduce HbA1c is a good thing. Now, is it because it's increasing your muscle density and so your muscle can soak in more glucose? and not have so much floating in the bloodstream? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, so it's metabolizing the glucose more efficiently,
Right.
exactly. And that
Gotcha.
is because of the muscle density. So basically, we have the same amount of muscle cells in our bodies. We can't change the number of muscle cells, but each muscle cell has these like little, they're kind of like straws, and they're called myofibrils. So imagine that I might have this many myofibrils in my muscle cell, but then when through osteogenic loading, I might wind up with many more myofibrils within the muscle cell. So the muscle cell itself becomes stronger and denser. And that's some of the reason why we can also see that even people who with artificial joints, knee replacements, hip replacements, start to see a lot more stability, a lot more strength, and a lot less joint and back pain, which is one of the key indicators that this is working as well. So imagine if you've had back pain for years and all of a sudden it's gone.
Wow. Yeah, to people that have back pain, that would be unbelievably good.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I will say this. The first time I got on the devices, they're a little bit counterintuitive, because when you're pushing, when you're doing a leg press against the device, you almost feel like your knees are going to pop off because, as a man, at least, I was like, let's go as hard as we can. And I was literally pushing as hard as I could. Of course, the good part was there was somebody overseeing you the whole time. So I really appreciate that there's somebody guiding you as you go from machine to machine, and they're talking through with you, and they're encouraging you to put in your maximal weight and making sure that you're comfortable. So I think that's really cool the way you guys are doing it. But once you understand how it works, I think most people get it. Intuitively, they get it. And the benefits of just getting stronger musculature and stronger skeletal a base is really cool, I think.
Yeah. And so part of that, when we start off with people, we start slowly. So we encourage people. I think in a Tony Robbins environment, there's a lot of, excitement and desire to push things really hard. But generally, we start a little bit more slowly to make sure that we're safely loading our bodies. But the important part is that John Jaquish set it up so that we're in an ergonomic position that is where we're at our strongest in each of these positions. So it's highly unlikely that we can actually injure ourselves. The way that he did that is he started looking at who are the humans who have the highest bone density on Earth, and gymnasts are the humans who have the highest bone density on Earth. Of course, most of them retire by age 19 because of their joints, right? So they have a lot of joint damage, but their bones are incredibly strong. And if you think of any time a gymnast, man or woman, lands off of any of the devices, whether it's a floor routine, uneven bars, the beam, they always land in a squat position where the knees are at approximately 120-degree bend. And so he started to watch who are the people that have the strongest bone density, and what are the positions that they're putting themselves in where they're able to load most safely. Because in fact, our bodies even know where we're at our strongest. If you think about any time you fall and you catch yourself, we tend to catch ourselves in a position that's kind of like this. Our elbows are slightly bent, right? And that's the exact same position that we would put you in on the devices, with bent elbows at about 120-degree bend in our elbows. So eliminating that weak range and putting ourselves in a position where we are in our strongest, always being observed by a coach, so that if we're doing something incorrectly, we're stopped so that we don't injure ourselves. Of course, it's impossible to say that we'll never injure ourselves, because we can injure ourselves walking down a sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
But it's a pretty low risk.
Okay. Sarah, how many sessions does somebody need to reverse, I don't know, the last 5-10 years of bone loss, if you will?
So everyone is going to be different. What we like to say is we suggest that everyone commit to at least a year to start. Some people see results within 6 months. But if you think that, it's taken, let's say 50 to 60 years to get to where we are in in our bone density, it's going to take a little time to build it back up. And just like a workout, once you're fit and strong, you don't stop working out either, right? Because then our bone density would start to go down again. But what we generally see is frequently we see that after about 3 months, you'll start to notice the effects in your body, feeling stronger, more efficiency in your movements, better posture, better balance. But then it takes at least usually about 6 months to start to see real significant shifts in the body. We have multiple people at our location. At this point, we have about 40 people who've gotten DEXA scans since they've been a member, and they've gone from either osteoporosis to osteopenia or from osteopenia back to completely normal bone density. And we just had someone who had about a 5% increase in just 6 months. So pretty great results that we see.
Pretty great results, I would say. Now, so we understand who's it for. Anybody over the age of 30, that obviously any biohackers that want to live optimally, but also people that are starting to feel that maybe their bones aren't what they should be, or they're getting diagnosed for osteopenia or osteoporosis in some ways. This is definitely a must-have technology for you. Now, who is this not for? Who should not be doing OsteoStrong?
So there's very few people that this is not for. Unmedicated hypertension, so that's one. Muscular dystrophy, and then if you have an active hernia. And other than that, almost everyone can do it. We have the very rare occasion that someone might have a negative interaction with it because of an autoimmune condition or something. But mostly, as I said, from as long as you're 5 feet tall, it's pretty much any age can do it, and up until any age as well. Of course, if you have concerns, it's always something that you should check with your doctor about first. So we're never going to recommend someone do it if they don't feel comfortable with it. But as I said, most all people can do it.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of this technology, if you can't tell. Now let's talk about your facility, Sarah. I've been to it. It's in Mar Vista in LA, and it's a cool facility. So I know that you've got the 4 devices for OsteoStrong. So tell us about that, but also you've got some additional gizmos in the facility. So tell the listeners about that too.
Absolutely. So at our facility, we have, as we talked about already, the 4 devices, the OsteoStrong technology. We also have whole body vibration that we use as part of the protocol because it activates our central nervous system, gets our body primed up and ready for the work that we're doing on the OsteoStrong technology. But we've also added some more devices that are really about health optimization, aging gracefully, building immunity. So we have multiple frequency devices. We have a biocharger, which you've probably seen as well, potentially at Tony events as well as other places. So it's a frequency device that uses pulse electromagnetic field therapy along with Rife technology and light to essentially recharge your cells. So that is the biocharger. It's got a bunch of different, what we call recipes that you can focus on different things. It's an amazing device. We also have pulse electromagnetic frequency mats that you lie on with binaural beats in headphones. So it's a great way to recharge, re-energize, or in the evenings, it's great for relaxation. We have Normatec compression boots, which of course are used very frequently by athletes for muscle recovery, but they're also just amazing for the lymphatic system, for tired legs. A lot of people, even with neuropathy, find some great results doing compression. And we have red light therapy as well. So we have the Juve red light therapy, which is a mixture of red and near infrared light. And so that works on our muscles and joints. So it works internally, great for muscle recovery. I personally find it's amazing for mental clarity, for focus, for overall mood. I feel my mood is generally elevated when I do it. It's also great for skin. And for men, it's really wonderful for increasing testosterone as well.
Yeah, I've read some of the studies there, and I've got one of my own devices at home. So you've got quite a plethora of devices there, Sarah.
We do.
Yeah, good job.
It's a really fun place to come, and everything that we have is all things that have been tested not only by us, but we are committed to really bringing products to our community that really work. So everything really works.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in the LA area, then you owe it to yourself to at least visit an OsteoStrong facility. I think the one closest to you will be Sarah's at Mar Vista. If you're not in LA though, Sarah, where can people go?
So, and actually in LA, there's more now on the east side. So if you're in the Valley, there is Studio City, Encino, and Tarzana. There are 2 now in Pasadena.
Wow.
And then pretty much if you go all the way around the country, we have over 100 OsteoStrong locations now worldwide, including 10 countries and all over the US.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Here's a personal question for you. What are some of your, let's say your top 3, either biohacks or anti-aging hacks that you would share with the audience?
Okay. So I would say that my top 3 right now are going to be 2 are free and we can do from anywhere, and 1 is one of our devices. So I am a huge fan of red light therapy. Whenever possible, I try to do it every day. I have the blessing of being able to do that frequently, but it is something that you can do every day and can support you in so many ways. But the other thing that I've been doing very regularly that I'm finding to have really profound effects on my mental, emotional, spiritual, as well as physical health is I go for a walk outside. For me, I live quite close to the beach. So I walk on the sand in the morning and ground. I notice that I have significantly less issues with, like, my back is much less tight when I do it. I have overall just a feeling, again, of sense of well-being. And then the other part that I've added to it, which is kind of taking it to the next level, is breath work. So a fun fact is that I love Wim Hof breathing. And Wim Hof actually has an app that is a free app. And he himself does guided breath work on it. So you can download his app and do the breath work. So my routine these days is I go early in the morning to OsteoStrong and do red light therapy and biocharger. And then I head down to the beach, take off my shoes, go for a walk on the beach and do a walking meditation. And then I sit and do several rounds of breath work. And it's just an amazing way to start out my day. Breath work is incredible for so many. I mean, obviously for the obvious of anxiety, depression, but also skin elasticity, just oxygenation of your blood. We don't really think about how often we hold our breath. So it's something that's pretty powerful, I've been finding.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the day. Well done there.
Yes.
Sarah, how can people, or where can people find you online?
Absolutely. So you can find us and our Los Angeles location at osteostrongla.com. And we're also at OsteoStrong LA on Facebook and Instagram. And to find other locations around the country, if you go to osteostrong.me and look at the locations page, you can find the closest location to you. And most locations will offer you a complimentary session to come try it out. So you can just go check it out for yourself and see if it's a good fit for you. We absolutely do that. And we'd love to invite all of you in.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, again, if you're listening and you're over 30, strongly consider going in. It's a free session. Check it out. And if you like it, then take advantage of this new technology. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the Anti-Aging Hacks Show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.